Ole, 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 ole. Ooh, sorry. Welcome to the Bastard Show, where I talk football and miscellaneous stuff, and mostly football. I am indeed your host, Sam Ruffing. And in this, the 84th episode of Roughing the Passer, I shall be talking about, well, golf. Specifically the Ryder Cup, which took place over this past 3 days, Friday to Saturday to Sunday, in what was an amazingly terrible effort by the United States, who lost the Ryder Cup 16.5 to 11.5. It was just brutal all the way around. I mean, I was really hoping this U.S. team would finally be the one who wins in Europe, in Rome, Italy, at the Marco Simone golf course. They would pull off the victory for the United States to win in Europe for the first time in 30 years. And we'd be celebrating a new dynasty as the Europeans have finally fallen over on their face after their cane snap because all their old players are blech, and there's nobody new to replace them. However, that was not the case. Europe's young core looked great. The United States were the old ones who fell flat on their face. And it was just a bloodbath. I mean, the U.S. looked scared, woefully underprepared, out of form. They looked rattled by the crowd. It was just horrendous. And I don't think anything sums up this Ryder Cup more than the opening hole of Victor Hovland and what's his name? Ludwig Aberg. It's spelled Aberg. I don't know how you get that. Swedish people, I guess. We should call him Iceberg, because you got the Iceman, who's Henrik Stenson, and then you get Aberg, the iceberg who sinks America's hopes and dreams. Versus Max Homa and Brian Harman. On this opening tee shot, Max Homa piped it. This is alternate shot, by the way, we're starting with. Max Homa piped it down the middle, or just up the right side, in the fairway, about 300 yards, and then Victor Hovland, who is the hottest, as in, hottest playing golfer in all of the world, up there with Bryson and Cameron Smith, decided to hit it 15 yards past him in the middle of the fairway. On the approach shots, Brian Harman hit a beautiful, nice shot for the United States, 20 feet, a little bit short left of the pin, but 20 feet is 20 feet. It's a good shot. While Ludwig Aberg, who was a controversial pick in this Ryder Cup, missed it right and long, ending up on the back fringe about 40 feet away. Which, pretty good position for the United States to be in. You got a nice little putt, which maybe you make if you're lucky, but you get close tapping for par and give the Euros a little bit of pressure to make the comebacker for par. But these two shots here summed up the Ryder Cup absolutely perfectly. I mean, Europe was down. They were in not an ideal spot. And they had by no right any chance to win that hole. They should at least tie it. Yet somehow, Henrik Stenson, what's his name? Victor Hovland went up there with his wedge, something he's not been good at for most of his career. Chipped the ball up, it starts rolling towards the pin, it curls, and drops in to get the Europeans an unlikely birdie. And the U.S. has a chance to answer. They're on the putting green, about 20 to 30 feet, not terrible. They have one of the best putters in Max Homa, who's got his aim point. After being set up in A1 steak sauce position. And what do? Max Homa blows his putt by a foot and a half right of the hole, losing that hole improbably. And I don't think any hole on that course, any hole in that tournament, describes the U.S. versus Europe any better. Europe's down, they win. America has every chance to win, they blow it somehow. And those two mentalities, those two things reflect the mentality of these two teams, and specifically the captains, Zach Johnson and Luke Donald. Zach Johnson was that 20-footer. He was that fairway, green, two-putt par. Simple. He's been the Ryder Cup captain for 2 years. since the Steve Stricker left after the 2021 Ryder Cup. He had a young, loaded core of players like, Scotty Scheffler, who was an amazing captain's pick. He had Brooks Koepka. He had Colin Morikawa. He had Dustin Johnson. He had Bryson DeChambeau. He had Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth. And there were newcomers coming in like Cameron Young and Will Zalatoris, who could help the Ryder Cup down the line and keep this train going against, the Europeans. He had a much deeper talent pool. He had, as we find out, the availability to pick live golf players, which the Europeans did not. But what did he do with his picks, with his captain's picks? What did he do with his captaining decisions? He was that 20-footer missing a foot and a half right. He had every opportunity to pick Bryson. He had every opportunity to pick DJ, Patrick Reed, Cameron Young, Keegan Bradley, whomever. And who does he pick? He picks guys like Jordan Spieth, Justin Thomas, Ricky Fowler, Colin Morikawa, Sam Burns, and Brooks Koepka. Now, there are obviously a few good choices in there, like JT was surprisingly good, and Brooks Koepka was and I do support the Brooks pick, even though he hasn't played great. But he made those choices despite having every opportunity available to him. He takes the weakest, most pathetic looking, options out there because he didn't want to offend anybody. Because he didn't want to lose this Ryder Cup. He didn't want to lose trust with the media because they would rip him if he picked live golfers, even though Bryson had just shot a 58. He didn't want to lose trust with the players by picking guys they weren't friends with. So that's why he picked, Justin Thomas, even though he's been playing like crap. That's why he picked Sam Burns, even though he's been playing he's been great. That's why he didn't pick guys like Dustin Johnson, Cameron Young, Bryson DeChambeau. He didn't want to lose players' respect and love by making them go out and play before the Ryder Cup. Because 9 of the 12 U.S. players did not play a tournament within 5 weeks of the Ryder Cup. He didn't want to lose. He didn't want to risk making them bored or embarrassed by doing team building exercises. He didn't want to make them practice alt shot with each other. He didn't want to lose favorite the PGA Tour by picking live golfers. He didn't want to lose that. And he didn't want to lose the Ryder Cup by picking controversial guys and being wrong and whatever else when he should have. But because he didn't really want to lose, he ended up losing anyways. And his mentality of not wanting to lose, of picking guys only because they were friends. I mean, Sam Burns, the only reason he was on that team because he was friends with Scotty Scheffler. That's it. Not because of his play, because he played in the President's Cup with Scotty Scheffler and he was terrible. Absolutely terrible. Both of them were. But he picked them anyways for the Ryder Cup because they're friends. And he didn't want to offend them. He didn't want to lose any love from Mr. Scotty Scheffler over there. He didn't want to lose Jordan Spieth's approval by not picking Justin Thomas, or vice versa. It doesn't matter. He didn't want to lose any little bit of political outlet. He didn't want to completely make himself a target from live fans, so he picked Brooks Koepka as the only live player, instead of picking guys who would have done better instead of picking more live golfers than just that. He picked Ricky Fowler because he's popular, and that's about all. Because he didn't want the TV partners to get mad, I guess. I don't know. But his mentality of not wanting to lose clearly bled into the players. I mean, golly goodness. The amount of matches I saw where players were just hitting it short into the water. They were pulling it left of the green. They were slicing it right off the tee box. You're like, I just hope this doesn't go bad. Oh, no, I hooked it. Oh, no, I sliced it. Oh, man, I don't want to lose this match. Oh, shoot, I missed an 8-footer to tie. Stuff like that. And it ultimately cost him the thing. And also because he was a little scared to pick guys who might get a little bit of backlash. He didn't pick the top alpha dogs on this that could have been there for the U.S. team. I'm Bryson DeChambeau, Mr. 58, who's controversial but a dog. I mean, Patrick Reed, who is a very controversial. No one likes him, but he has an undeniable great Ryder Cup record. He should have been picked. Taylor Gooch had won 3 tournaments this year, more than any American. Wasn't picked. Dustin Johnson had a great Ryder Cup record. Had been playing the best this year, but neither did JT, yet he still got picked. Keegan Bradley didn't get picked. Cam Young didn't get picked. And the U.S. was sorely lacking some dogs out there. I mean, they needed guys who would go up to the European crowd who was booing them the entire time, chanting "Ole" and all that other stuff, and stick it to them. Because guess what? Those guys have been used to being booed their entire career. I mean, most people don't like Bryson. Most people don't like Patrick Reed. Most people aren't the greatest fans of Cameron Young or Keegan Bradley. They would have been used to it. But the soft little puppies that he chose of Ricky Fowler, Colin Morikawa, Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth, they're not used to being booed. They're never booed out there. They get all the praise and love from the media and the PGA Tour and the fans. So when they go over to a hostile environment where they're actually being rooted against, they're like, what do I do here? Oh, you know the only guy on the United States who didn't follow the mentality of one Zach Johnson and who actually wanted to win and wasn't afraid of losing was the one who was most hated by everybody, Patrick Cantlay. Say what you want about how he plays extremely slow, how he's not necessarily the greatest teammate, by not wearing the hat, by being a little pretentious himself. He went out there and he won 2 points for the right. He played probably the best of anyone, maybe besides Max Homa, in the U.S. Ryder Cup. Patrick Cantlay was hated, but he went out there and performed because he had the mentality of, I'm winning this dang thing. I'm angry. I want it. Obviously, it didn't work out for the rest of the team, but he wanted it. U.S. needed more guys like that. Needed guys who wanted to be there, who wanted to win, like Bryson, who literally had a USA Ryder Cup umbrella at the PGA Championship. He was campaigning. He came back and shot a 58 to win a Live Golf tournament, and you didn't consider him because you didn't want to lose any favor with the media or the PGA. And on the other hand, we have Luke Donald, the man who is the personification of Victor Hovland's chip-in. He was kind of out of a... I mean, his career is pretty much like the Ryder Cup for Europe. Dominant, fell off, doesn't look good. They somehow win. I mean, he was a former #1 player in the world, but then he changed his swing. He became terrible. He's fallen off the map as a player. And as a Ryder Cup captain, he was the second choice. Henrik Stenson was the first choice for Ryder Cup captain for Europe. He held the position for about all of 10 months before he was like, yeah, I'm leaving for Live. They're paying me way more money. They're actually paying me a lot of money. And that left, Luke Donald with all of a year and 1 month to plan a Ryder Cup captaincy and team, and that's just not nearly as much time. Not to mention, if we're going out of position on like that, fringe versus that pristine green there, his talent pool of players is not nearly as big as, say, the United States. He doesn't have a Bryson out there. He doesn't have a Cameron Young. He doesn't have a Brooks Koepka to go to. He doesn't have a Scotty Scheffler. Well, he does. Okay, it makes some more captain's picks. He doesn't have those available options that he does. In terms of captain's picks, Luke Donald doesn't have the availability of talent that Zach Johnson does. He doesn't have a Bryson DeChambeau who he could just call as a captain's pick. He doesn't have a Patrick Reed. He doesn't have a, Dustin Johnson, a Jordan Spieth, Justin Thomas. Doesn't matter. He doesn't have those guys. What does he have? Well, all his LIV buddies who have been the Ryder Cup stalwarts for the last 20 years left for LIV. And the DP World Tour decided not to allow them back on, which was still very stupid. But he couldn't pick guys like Sergio, who has the best Ryder Cup record of all time. He couldn't pick Poulter, who is, unbelievably great in singles matches. He couldn't pick Lee Westwood if he wanted to. I don't know why you'd want to pick Lee Westwood. He couldn't pick the young guns on LIV Tour, like David Puig or Eugenio Chikara. He couldn't pick those guys. He had to deal with a supposedly weak Europe roster, which had guys like, for the picking, like Robert McIntyre, even though he automatically qualified. He had guys like, Nikolai Højgaard, Ludwig Aberg, Matt Wallace to choose from. I mean, not a lot of good players out there. But you know what? Despite being the second choice, despite being on the fringe, as it were, despite having his back up against the wall and having absolutely no right, he could have just called this in, chipped it close, tapped in for par, and maybe hoped that Team Europe at least scrapes by with a fairly decent Ryder Cup, even though it's a loss. He didn't do that. Luke Donald chipped it in. He wanted to win this Ryder Cup. And he didn't care what anyone thought about him in doing so. So his captain's picks were criticized heavily, but they turned out to be so perfect because he wanted to win, and he picked the guys he thought would get him that win. I mean, who picked Ludwig Egbird? Egbird. Eggman. Anyways, who picked Ludwig Aber, whatever his name is. Doesn't matter. He's been a pro for all of 4 months? He'd only just won his first tournament. He's 22 years old. Sure, he drives it far, but he's really young. He's got no experience. I get that he's hot. He just won a tournament, but Ludwig? Really? Nikolai Højgaard. Very young, great driver of the golf ball, but again, young, hasn't done much in his career, and he's got a twin brother who you could pair him up with in doubles matches, whatever. You didn't pick him either, so just one Højgaard twin. Shane Lowry. Shane Lowry? Why Shane Lowry? This guy did not play well in the previous Ryder Cup. He hasn't been playing great golf since winning the British Open. Why Shane Lowry? Justin Rose. I guess he needed one elder statesman on the team, and yes, he did win the AT&T Pebble Beach, but why Justin Rose? It doesn't make any sense. Obviously, Tommy Fleet was a good pick. And there was another. And Sepp Straka, it was it's an alright pick. I get he won the John Deere, but it's an odd pick to be sure, which is what most of the media are saying, most people are saying, which I was kind of thought it was weird, but I also had no clue who the heck you'd pick for Team Europe. So it was certainly strange. But those picks, man, and his mentality of I don't care what anyone says. I know I don't have any LIV players, but I don't care. I'm going to go out there. I don't care that I'm a second pick. I'm the second choice for captain. I don't care that I have 13 months. I am chipping this proverbial ball in and winning this dang Ryder Cup. And that's what it looked like the entire time. His mentality was that. That's what the team's mentality was. I mean, if you just watch those matches, you can just tell the Europeans are like, yeah, we got this. Stick it close. Bam, 20-footer. I mean, what's his name? Victor Hovland's 20-footer on 18 of the 4-ball eagle putt just rolled and rolled and rolled somehow and just fell in perfectly to tie the match. John Rahm tying up his match to only hold the U.S. to half a point by hitting that, eagle putt that should have gone 6 feet by, but it dropped after hitting the cup. What's his name? Just Shane Lowry and Sepp Straka, guys who were criticized heavily before this, went out there and stuck it to Ricky Fowler and Colin Morikawa. Just like that. Tyrrell Hatton, John Rahm playing great. And because he wanted to win, he made his players go out and practice, do a bunch of team events, like show up at the, those parties beforehand. Probably had them practice some team alternate shot, maybe did team building activities, even though those do sound extremely cheesy. I guess they do work for the Ryder Cup. Who knows? He had his players play. I mean, his players played, beforehand, like within 2 weeks of the Ryder Cup. So they were fresh. They looked prepared. They were ready. They wanted to win that. The USA, they didn't play within that time frame. And they just took it. Luke Donald wanted to win this. Zach Johnson did not want to lose this. And obviously you can tell which one came out on top. I mean, even more to the underdog point, the proverbial fringe, the off the green, the chip of Luke Donald. The man was number one in the world once, sure. Obviously, Team Europe was once great and winning every Ryder Cup. Zach, but he never won a major. He fell out of form. He just became kind of irrelevant. Zach Johnson, the man won the Masters and the British Open. Arguably the two most important majors in golf. He's been at the top. He's been a good player for a long time. He had every opportunity. He never really fell out of favor or relevance with anyone. In fact, you could say he overachieved occasionally. And by all rights, it is considered better than Luke Donald as a player. But somehow, Luke Donald did not let him or be intimidated, did not let his second choice intimidate him. He went up there and chipped it in and won that Ryder Cup for his team. And Zach Johnson and his captain's picks, who went 4-14-4, who were scared to death out there of losing, lost it. That's my take on the Ryder Cup. I want to know yours in the comments below. I thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you later.